CSETI.org, CSETI.org, and see this picture. It is, I believe, the most important photograph ever taken in the 60-plus year history of the modern era of UFO and ET events, because it's not just of an object or a craft. It is of a person, and it's clearly not human, but it's a humanoid. And it was there, and to describe this, the best I can describe it is when you start getting into trans-dimensional electronic systems, which is what you're dealing with when you're traveling faster than the speed of light across the galaxies and across the star systems, is that it's this orb-like object, which is clearly in the photograph that no human was making, clearly no human was making. It's sort of projecting a cone of light that illuminated in an instant. I mean, this had to be very quick because you were holding the camera without a tripod with the shutter open for 3 or 4 seconds.
Right.
And it had to flash in very quickly, and this is what we often see when we're out there. We'll see these brilliant bursts of light very close to us, and this is what it is. It is an extraterrestrial transport system, if you want to look at it that way, that is what I've likened to electronic astral projection. So it's as if you were to take the astral body, or in this sense the physical body, and raise its frequency to the level of something beyond the speed of light, and be able to move it across space-time transdimensionally through this kind of electronic system. And that's what these things are. It is not your grandfather's space shuttle or Oldsmobile or anything else for that matter. And the fact that we had heard these ETs, now interestingly, when people first heard it, most people heard female voices, but I clearly said to everyone, I hear a male voice. And this is a photograph of the male. No question. And interestingly, you know, there is this interactive, what we call a close encounter of the fifth kind, which is a term that I coined back in 1990 to describe when humans ask the ETs to appear in a peaceful manner for a interplanetary, diplomatic, conscious purpose, and they do in fact respond. That when the ETs respond in that setting, and there are a whole set of protocols, which we'll talk about in a moment, for those of you who are new to the show, that deal with higher states of consciousness, remote viewing, and being able to vector or zoom in a craft from space or from wherever it's located. But that, you know, in your case, Raven, you were asking the ETs, and it started about 6 or 8 months before at the Outer Banks in North Carolina, to ask the ETs to connect with you, and with your sort of camera, that your neurological physical system, as you're pushing the button for and this ET clearly is floating above the chairs just outside the circle, turns at his waist and chest, and is looking straight at the camera, at you. And
right.
This is not an accident. I mean, this is not a coincidence by any means. I mean, it's almost like he has come in and is posing and has this slight enigmatic smile on his face. And on the top of his head is something that almost looks like a yarmulke, but it's a thick sort of disc-shaped thing that I'm convinced is part of the electronic transportation, if you wish, electronic astral projection system that extraterrestrial civilizations use in conjunction with their spacecraft to come into very close proximity. And now, of course, some people say, well, why don't they just flat out materialize fully in the flesh and blood right there? I always point out that, number one, it's risky. Number two, not necessarily all 40 people who were at this event were ready for something like that. And number three, we really are not in a position to question why they manifest the way they do, but we just have to be open-minded and creative enough to understand that we're dealing with a lot of very advanced civilizations, plural, whose technologies are, 10 to the 6th, 10 to the 7th, 100,000 to millions of years more advanced than we are right now, and who have this ability to manifest very close to a group of people. Now, what's significant about this is that it was an interplanetary close encounter of the fifth kind. It was an ambassador from their system interacting with our team in the middle of 800,000 acres of wilderness in Joshua Tree National Park. And that is absolutely, frankly, frickin' mind-blowing and amazing. And when you look at this picture on a high-definition TV, we're getting ready to make a new DVD and disc with a lot of these new events that have happened, because since the book, we have a new book that came out about a year ago, in fact a year ago this week, called Kontakt, Countdown to Transformation, that has with it a free DVD that has a lot of the images of the craft and objects that we've seen over the years and the tones, and you can get that at disclosureproject.org. But in the last 12 months, literally, there is so much new material, including this ET, who subsequently informed us through a whole lot of remote view and electronic interface that he was actually from the Andromeda Galaxy.
Right.
And that his name, I was told, was Bijou, like that. And that, in fact, once we realized you had this picture, we went out the night that we all kind of saw it, a couple of days later after you'd had a chance to review it, and we measured everything to get exactly where this happened. And we were there with all our electronics, and I remember when a member of our team, Emery, had all these digital magnetometers and other things, and we were asking questions such as, we're getting information, remote view through consciousness, that you're from the Andromeda Galaxy, and they would go off the scale. And then as the energy gathered, we had a digital thermometer out there, and we're out in the open desert at this high plane at 4,000 or 5,000 feet out in the open desert. It had been about 36 degrees. It was quite chilly. And then we looked, and we all started feeling warm, almost like we had to take our jackets off. And the digital thermometer had gone from 36 degrees to 69 degrees. As we were having this continuing contact with this species and with this particular ET, as he was giving us the information about the fact that he wasn't even from this galaxy. Now, those of you who need a refresher course in astronomy, a solar system is our sun, which is our star, and our 8 or 9 planets, if you count Pluto, which they don't anymore. And the Earth is the third planet from the star, the sun. Now, our solar system is one of billions of star systems in the Milky Way galaxy, which is about 100,000 light years across. That's the distance a beam of light would travel going 186,000 miles a second for 100,000 years. It's a huge distance in space. Now, the Andromeda Galaxy is the twin galaxy to the Milky Way. Okay, the Milky Way galaxy being our home galaxy that has our solar system in it, that's 100,000 light years across. But 2.5 million light years away is the Andromeda Galaxy, which is one of billions of galaxies. Now, the Andromeda Galaxy is very similar. It's a spiral galaxy like the Milky Way, very similar size. In fact, we're coming closer to each other. At some point in the remote future, we'll actually collide or combine these two galaxies. But what's interesting is that this ET being from an Andromeda Galaxy, which is what he clearly told us, and our electronic magnetometers went off the scale, our electronic laser detectors, the digital thermometer, everything was confirming this as we were getting this information and articulating it. It's a very interactive process. You have to remember that at the speed of light, 186,000 miles every second, that's the speed of light, that it would take 2.5 million years to get to the Andromeda Galaxy. So what we're dealing with here are extraterrestrial vehicles and communication systems and teleportation systems that are trans-dimensional, that go beyond the speed of light, because you cannot, no one lives 2.5 million years to go, even if you could travel at the speed of light. So you're dealing with a whole new paradigm of physics and energy and propulsion and communication. And guess what? When you go into these trans-dimensional energy fields, you are now going into the domain of the so-called, what the mystics would call the etheric, the astral, the thought realm, the consciousness realm. And that's why on the World Puja Network we talk so much about this, because everyone listening is very aware of the Vedas and the higher states of consciousness and meditative states. And you really, if you understand that, what's within each of us, this conscious universe that's within every human being and every sentient being in the cosmos, you can begin to understand the kind of technology that would permit a civilization to go from Andromeda, 2.5 million light years from Earth, to our star system, and appear in a circle and have Raven Nabulsi photograph him as he's hovering and sort of waving. His hand is up in the air, his left hand, as he's turning towards the camera with an enigmatic smile on his face. This is absolutely the most astonishing photograph and event that I have ever seen and heard of in the last 50 or 60 years of UFO, modern UFO events. And this is the kind of ascendancy that I wanted to talk about because, frankly, those of you who are interested, we're going to be at Joshua Tree National Park November 7th through the 13th. That's this November 7th through the 13th. And those of you who want to join us, please go to cseti.org and contact our webmaster and our coordinator there, Debbie Foch, F-O-C-H, and she will get you enrolled. But the point is that we're going to be back there in about, well, now it's less than a month. It's 3.5, 4 weeks from now. And so it's very exciting because this is the kind of event, whether it's the ET's voices being recorded digitally, this photograph that Raven you took, the kind of objects that we're photographing that are craft and transdimensional objects. It's this ascendancy, and it is also, I have to point out that in 2007, not quite 3 years ago, and then particularly in 2008, we had this amazing lock-on from an interstellar system out in the sector of Orion and Sirius that we had our electronic devices go off initially for 23 minutes without a break in 2007 that was facilitated in consciousness, but had this manifestation electronically, and everyone could see the energy that was coming out of this sphere of rose quartz I was holding in my hand as I held it up to the sky. And when I locked onto Orion, there was an unbroken transdimensional energy that was facilitated with the crystal and with my consciousness that came in and out of my left hand into these electronic detectors. And then a year later, in 2008, we had over 2 hours unbroken of these electronic downloads, which are actually had a sort of rhythm to them that I attempted to translate in consciousness, and which is in the new book, Kontakt, Countdown to Transformation, that I mentioned a moment ago. That's at disclosureproject.org, where I tried to get the feeling of what they were saying, because there is a message in them, and it's very abstract, and it's not like channeling. It's more like going into an abstract state of consciousness and feeling and seeing and sensing what they're saying or what the energy field is that's coming in. It's very abstract, but I tried to translate it as best I can, and it's in, I think, one of the last chapters of that book, Kontakt, Countdown to Transformation, that has this really amazing DVD that comes with it. Unfortunately, that DVD does not have this picture of this ET being, which we hope to have a new one here in the next few months. We have some people who are volunteers working on it. And this photograph, as well as the one from Rio Rico that happened last year in the Outer Banks, but also the photographs that were obtained this year at the Outer Banks, and also at Rio Rico and Mount Shasta and other places will be in there as well. So we're working on that. But I think that the main message here is that the way that you, Raven, got these photos is the consciousness contact. Ask the ETs to cooperate and to kind of utilize your camera, but also linked up with your awareness. And it's being in that kind of flow consciousness, that state of consciousness that facilitates this kind of contact. And people all over the world are having this happen, even as we speak.
Right, and the thing is, too, that I never saw anything when I was taking the photographs. It just happened to be on